back, it's lovely to see you again. Today we're revisiting the horizontal design that we did way back many months ago in the summer, and I did quite a formal long and low table arrangement, which as a florist I would refer to as a horizontal design or a long and low arrangement, and it tends to be something that we would do for the centre of a table or for in front of the bride and groom on their wedding day for the top table. And when I made this arrangement before, I did it quite formally with lots of rules and explained to you how you get the outline shape. And today I thought I would look at the same design but using these gorgeous pink, very pale pink rose. This is a spray rose called Mini Eden, if I can just get one out of the bucket. And they've come in, they're a little bit wonky in their shape, but I thought we would start by using this as our main flower, and I would go for something far more informal and maybe add some country flowers alongside it. So this time I'm not going to talk you through the flowers first, I'm going to talk through them as we go along because I haven't quite decided yet how this is going to progress. So we'll start by creating a little bit of an outline frame and to create the shape of the arrangement that I want to do. And it's almost going to be like a large diamond. So if we look down on it, it's going to be longer than the width of the arrangement. Sometimes, depending on the foliage and the flowers I've got, it will either be quite pointy, very much like a diamond, or if the foliage is more rounder in its texture and shape, then it will form more of an oval shape. But it will be something that will be low, that if it was in front of a bride and groom, they would be able to see over the top. And because I'm styling this for in front of the bride and groom, it's going to be slightly longer on the side you're looking at it from, because if it was on the edge of the table, it would be nice if it would slightly be longer than the section behind, which needs to be shorter to enable there to be more room on the table for the wine glasses, the champagne, the cutlery and the crockery. So it's almost a little bit asymmetrical with the side facing you slightly longer and this back section here slightly shorter. So this style of arrangement is not necessarily ideal for the centre of a table. So same style but slightly different. Okay, so I'm going to start by creating the outline shape, and because my chosen foliage, this is Ophthalmus Sussex Silver, because it's quite pointy in its natural form, my arrangement is likely to be more of a diamond shape than an oval. If I was using the pistache, so I've got this foliage as well, if that was also my choice of, my only foliage I should say, it's much rounder in its appearance, so you get a much rounder head, then your design will end up more oval. So this is pointy, so I'm going to get a pointier shape. This is far rounder, I'm going to end up with a rounder shape. But for now, the pistache foliage is going to be used to fill in and hide my mechanics. And my mechanics in this design is just a small, bit more than a third of a block of floral foam, which I've pre-soaked and I've attached to my plastic dish with some anchor tape or pop tape or whatever you refer to it as. And if you can't quite catch the names of the foliages and the flowers as I talk about them, then I will list them in the box below, and please feel free to ask as many questions as you want. Now I also have some wonderful heather. Now you can see with this it's quite woody. There's not a particularly good shape with it. It's a bit wild and wonderful. This has been gifted to me by a very kind customer. They've cut their heather back over the weekend, so I've got the option to use that within the design to create this informal look that I'm trying to achieve. So what I'm going to do first of all is roughly gauge the width, or sorry, the length of my arrangement. Just move those slightly. And bearing in mind that my longest rose spray is going to almost gauge the outline shape of my arrangement. So it would be pointless me going any longer than that. Otherwise I would have this big volume of foliage around the outside, and then I would have very short sprayed roses towards the centre, and the proportions and the balance of the material wouldn't be correct. So that's what I've roughly gauged as my length. If I get myself another piece of the ophthalmus and I roughly measure it. Now, the more confident you get in your arranging, you won't have to do this type of method, but straight away I'm going to have two pieces that will give me equal length on both sides. Remember always to remove any foliage, thorns that are likely to go into the foam. And I'm going to angle this slightly forward. So I'll pick it up and show you in just a second. But this is what I mean by making it slightly asymmetrical. So you can see it's almost curved in its shape. So when it's at the front of the table there, it's cascading towards the front and gives far more visual impression to your guests that are looking at the table arrangement. Bearing in mind that the bride is going to be sitting behind it and the groom alongside her, they also want something nice to look at. They don't want to just see moss or leaves or floral foam. They also need to have something attractive there. Okay, so now we've worked out the length. My front and back, which are going to be my widths, are roughly half of this length here. And again, it's only an estimate, it doesn't have to be perfect. But if we get ourselves a few pieces of the grey foliage, so for the moment I'm just using this one foliage, and if we roughly work out where we think half would be, then that is going to give me the width of the front. So I'm going to place two in today, just alongside one another. And then my back section, if you remembered, I'm going to keep slightly shorter because the bride and groom hopefully are going to have food and drink and condiments on the table. So we need to leave enough room for them to be able to put everything in front of them and by the side of them while they're eating their meal. So if we turn that to the side, I've gone slightly shorter here, only a small bit, and more length at the front. And if you have any beautifully trailing foliages like ivy, or if you have bare grass, you can always cascade it there over the front of the table. And that, for a moment, is just giving me a simple outline. I haven't got any height material in yet, but what I will do is continue to strengthen that outline by using some of the longer pieces of the ophthalmus. Gorgeous foliage, looks very similar to rosemary, lasts a really long length of time, comes from the fabulous Irish green guys over in Southern Ireland. And you'll see for a moment, all I've done is created an outline. I'm still low down on my foam. I haven't worked my way up to the top of the foam. I've kept it low, almost sitting on top of that plastic container. And hopefully when we've finished, we won't be able to see that container at all. And what I've done is I've angled the materials down towards the desk. So we get that seamless join and we don't see the plastic tray underneath. We need to hide that tray and make sure that the ugly plastic and the floral foam is completely hidden. Now the height of your arrangement in this sort of style of low table arrangement is generally a bit shorter than your short sides. But because again this is in front of the bride and groom and we don't want to completely cover them, that's the last thing we need to do on their wedding day, is to drown them and hide them in all these wonderful flowers. I'm going to keep the top section maybe a bit shorter than what I normally would do if this was going in the centre of a table, or on the top of an altar we would sometimes use it. But what I'm trying to achieve is bringing the grey colour in, because it's quite a strong colour. We're trying to bring that all the way through the arrangement. So as well as having it on the outside, we have it on the narrower parts and the height as well. Okay, so that's pretty much all of the ophthalmos used up. That's a bit long, so we'll tuck that down shorter. Then what I will do now is bring in some of the pistache to give me a different texture and a different colour. And this is much thicker and much bunchier, so it will help hide the foam. That one I think is a bit long. It'll hide my foam, hide my plastic tray. Now at the moment I'm working backwards. Instead of the arrangement being in front of me, I'm working the wrong way around. So there might be a few little holes from where you're looking at it, but we'll sort that out towards the end. And what this is doing is covering my floral foam, thinking about those principles and elements of design that we've talked about over the last few weeks. I've got a contrast in colour, contrast in texture, different shape, and that all brought together helps us to achieve an overall good floral design. Now I could use some larger leaves here in the focal area to make that area visually stronger, but because I wanted a softer, more informal look, I'm going to use more country style flowers and avoid anything that's big and large and quite flat. So if I just spin that round, we haven't got all of the foam covered at this stage, and there are parts of the plastic base still showing, but you can see the shape that I'm trying to achieve. So if I just tilt that forward. So if we were doing the diamond shape, these side sections would be straight, but because I'm going for a top table style arrangement, I've angled them slightly forward, which looks far more pleasing on the edge of a table. And then now this will give me the opportunity to place in some of my heather. It's a gorgeous colour, it's very soft pink. It's very woody, so it needs to be cut back, and I'm sure it will flourish and come back even better and stronger. But you can see it's been left to its own devices, so we've got some strange shapes with the heather. But it's a fantastic colour, beautiful texture, and it's going to help me achieve, hopefully, that country look that I'm after this time. So if we discuss the country feel, and that would be your harmony. So in the principles of design, we've talked about harmony. And my overall theme, the unity of my floral design, is to have this country, very informal look. So I've tried to choose materials that are going to help me strengthen that theme. Now some of this is quite woody, so I'm just pulling off the bits that I don't need. Now of course at the moment the heather has this wonderful colouring on it. It's a lilac-y pink, very pretty shade, very feminine in its colouring. But of course the foliage on the heather is good enough to be used even without the flower on it. So if you have heather in the garden, you can still use it in the times of the year where there are no coloured leaves, no coloured flowers on there. And I'm just going to keep going until we've got a little bit more coverage of the foam. And again, I'm working sort of backwards, so I'm working so that the design is facing you as you see it coming together. But the design, the outline shape of the design has been created, and I often say this: get your outline shape right in the beginning, and then you can just follow through with the flowers and your other foliages by following that outline shape that you've already created. So the only thing with heather, it does drop quite a lot, so it's a bit messy to work with. So that's our outline shape. If I hold it up there, maybe you can see that better. Angled slightly forward, still a little bit of the foam showing on the plastic tray, but as we build up our design, then we'll cover those. So what I'm now going to do is look for some spray roses that are the smaller size. So that one is a great example. If we compare that with this size here, This one is far more visually dominant, it will catch the eye. So that size is far better in the centre there for the focal point. Anything small like this is much better on the outside, and accidentally that happens to be angled quite nicely, so that will again cascade down towards the table. Now we've got a fairly similar one here, which I can use as well. And I've removed all of the leaves off the rose because they do look quite unsightly after a while. And then these two smaller pieces of the rose can come towards the outer edge. And again, your outline shape is already created, so you don't need to go outside of the foliage edge that you've created. And this larger rose can come more towards the centre. Again, your height has already been created with your foliage, so we don't need to go any taller there in the centre. And we've got a much softer and daintier flower arrangement coming together. Right, so let's find some more smaller spray carnations. So, oh, not spray carnations, spray roses. So let's see if we can find some more. Now this could be a spray carnation, it could be statice, could be spray chrysanthemums, but you're trying to work from the smaller flower on the outer edge to the larger flower in the centre. And I'm building up a lovely style of design. Now these little roses are beautiful for this type of style. They're great in small little hand ties for bridesmaids. And if I just lift that forward again, you'll see that for a minute I'm strengthening the outline. So I'm going to work all the way around, very much like we did with the foliage. I created, oops, I just chopped his head off. We created an outline shape with the foliage, and what I'm doing now is following through on that outline shape by bringing the spray roses through the design. That was the one I accidentally chopped off. Now then, we just keep going in this pattern. Now remember what I said in the beginning, we also need to bring some flowers towards the back so the bride and groom have something attractive to look at. But you can see this is longer here to my back section, and we'll add in some flowers here at the base. Now if you have a large stem like this with quite a few large heads on it, if you don't want to use it all, it's quite acceptable to cut it down into shorter pieces so that you get the size of flower that you need. Now you might be able to tell some of these roses are they're slightly darker in their colour. They are all the same variety, but I think as they open they darken in the centre. And we keep working our way around. Now when we talk about the principles and elements of design, we've of course talked about trying to incorporate different shapes, different textures and different forms within your flowers. But of course there's going to be the time when your customer, whether it's a bride and groom or whether you're making something for a funeral, they might ask for one specific flower and you to only use one specific flower. So this is why I've decided to do this today with these mini flowers, just so that you can see that you don't always have to have that big selection of flowers that I refer to in other styles of design. Now what I'm going to do at this point, because I've put quite a heavy concentration of the spray roses there, and if we look at it from the side they're almost on the same level or the same plane. So what I'm now going to do to give us some recession and some variety in our heights, I'm going to put some flowers down short. So I've cut a few of the bigger rose heads to push down into the design, and this gives us different heights, varying the interest within the design. Rather than it being all one level, it gives us depth and dimension. It makes the design far more 3D in its effect. Now I could do with some flowers just towards the outside edge because we have a bit of a gap. Now I'm lucky today because I had quite a lot of these pretty little roses in stock. But this could be just one bunch of roses from the supermarket if you can't get the spray roses like I have. It could be spray carnations and roses together. And when we think about the principles and elements of design again, and we think about scale, the scale of this design is small. It's small and petite. We don't have any large flowers in it. So if I was doing something small, like this type of arrangement here, something that has small flowers, if I added a great enormous leaf in there, if I just use, I just show you a fascia. If I now add a big fascia leaf into this design, it's really out of proportion and scale with the rest of the flowers. This little flower is much better on a small top table. If we're doing a very large top table in a very large venue, then you'd be better off using bigger flowers and bigger foliage like this here. So everything within this design should be kept within the same scale. Small and dainty for everything that we choose. And I think what I'm going to do with this arrangement, even though I had extras on standby just in case I was going to use them, I think I'm going to leave it with just the small pretty roses. And you can see how I'm just building the back up there. Now for me, what we need to do is add some more material here. If I just lift that forward, if I show this here as an example, I've got this bud here, and then I've got a great big gap in the middle, 2 inches I would say there, where I don't have any flowers at all, and then I have this big concentration of flowers. And if we come over to this side, I've got the same issue in this section here. I've got quite a big gap there within the arrangement. Okay, so what I now need to do is to find something that's going to fill in that gap there. For me, this head is too big, so what I will do, chop off one of the heads, one of the more open heads. We can tuck that in and use it up, down, low. And then I've got that beautifully angled spray rose, which I can fit in that gap. So that's the position I've placed that in. So without it, we have that great big gap just there. By adding that in, I've got a far better rhythm of my flowers coming from one side to the other. So what I now need to do is do the same in this section here. So I need to look at my flower. Again, this one is angled down quite nicely. That head for me is too big because the outside of your arrangement needs the smaller flowers. So just by removing that one, I've got a much more attractive and better shaped flower to come right to the end. A little bit shorter, I think. So again, if I spin it round, you can see this is the area that I feel we need to bring some colour, and the rose, just by adding that in there, helps to fill in that section. I think we could do with another one on that end. Now I am, as I said, I'm quite lucky because I obviously have a choice of lots of flowers here. So you know, if you're practicing and you haven't got enough flowers to be able to do this, don't worry too much about it. There we are, much better now. That colour graduates all the way to the end, and then I have my foliage outline continuing past where the fresh flowers are. And then these small little ones that I removed, I can place in almost on top of the foam to give us recession and to help your eye travel down to the base, giving us that three-dimensional quality. Now at the moment, my little concern here is that I've gone too long with my foliage. There's quite a large gap there on the end before my flowers start. So I'm just going to make that tiny bit smaller. Otherwise we're going to end up with those pieces of greenery. The grey toned foliage is going to be quite dominant there on the end, and it's going to be like those wings that I quite often refer to. It's going to look like these two big flappy wings have been sitting on the end. So what do we think of that one? Not anything like I've done before. It's needs a little bit of filling in, so we'll use the pistache wherever I put it over here to make sure my mechanics, the floral foam and the plastic tray are completely covered. With this type of design, it's always really important to make sure that the foam is covered, because your customer is going to be up very close to it and they'll be able to see if you haven't covered your foam. And of course, it's very important to cover the foam to make sure that it doesn't dehydrate, and it will last much longer for your customer. So hopefully, if I just spin that round, I think it's pretty much done. This one is possibly sticking up a bit too high on the side, but I think that's something really pretty for this afternoon. What do we think? So just a simple spray rose this time, angled slightly forward, so if you're looking at it from the top, it's almost a crescent shape in its style. That's something that would work really well on the top table of a wedding. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. It's nice to be back, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye for now. Don't forget, leave a comment, ask a question, subscribe to the channel, or hit the notification bell, and then you'll know when I've uploaded a new video. And we'll see you soon.